Welcome to the monthly truck stops presented by the Motor Carriers Insurance Education. They do not qualify for state CE credits. We do provide programs that do qualify for state CE credits, and if you're looking for state CE credits, contact our office at trs@ibci.net and we'll furnish you that information. During the presentations, if you have questions, please type in the chat one of those questions. We will answer them if time allows. If not, we will respond by email or by after the webinar and share it with everybody if it's relevant, the question is relevant to the participants. We also want you to know that if you have experienced audio or other problems, you can send it through the chat window if you're having problems, or call our office at 800-741-4084. And we'll attempt to correct these problems as soon as possible. This is Tommy Ruke talking, and one of the things that we do often is discuss what we want to share on these truck stops, and one of my valuable assets is knowing Rich Bren, who helps me put these programs together. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich. Rich, welcome, and please take it from here, sir, and we appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you, Tommy. As you guys know, we sit around the country, so I'm sitting out here in Arizona and getting ready to do an introduction of a couple guys that likewise are, today at least, in Arizona. The guys from Help Inc. are all over the map, it seems like, and they'll explain to you why that is as they go through their presentation. Mr. Mark Doughty happens to be, I'll call him a friend. He may not want to take that upon himself, but I had the opportunity to know Mark when he was a motor carrier. Today he's serving as Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Help Inc. He's also President of a sub-entity of Help Inc. called Auxilium. In these roles, Mark is responsible for business development, financial management, and assisting in day-to-day oversight of Help in the Auxilium service offerings. He was also COO at Contractor Management Services. Some of you that know me recall when I worked with an independent contractor specialty group, and that's what CMS was. Mark was brought in there to help grow and develop some creative and strategic planning, take them into different segments and increase their transportation sector marketing. Mark also, as I noted earlier, was president of a motor carrier known as Moody's Quick, as well as Quick Product Solutions, and provided nationwide transportation services, warehousing, packaging, and distribution in Arizona and New York. Mark and I were participants, and still are, at the Arizona Trucking Association on the board of directors. Mark's also been on the executive committee, and he started his career at Discover Financial Services, where he was in an executive position for over 13 years. In addition to his role with the Arizona Trucking Association, he's also on the board of directors for ITS America, and he's active in the American Trucking Associations and the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. Some names that you guys recognize, and you may see Mark and recognize him at different events. With him today is Drew Anderson. Drew came down to warm Arizona for this presentation. He's the Director of Carrier Relations at PrePass. He brings over 25 years of experience combining regulatory compliance and technology. Drew came into the transportation industry with somebody else we know called Vigilo. And at Vigilo, he was the Director of Sales, responsible for all sales and marketing activities, as well as working with the various state trucking associations, industry trade groups, and bringing the Vigilo CSA Analytics truck fleet product across the country. He was a frequent speaker on CSA at different state and national industry associations. So again, you may recognize and know him from different events. As the Director of Carrier Relations at PrePass, he's responsible for key account management and approximately 40 of the largest PrePass customers that are currently in their role. Additional responsibilities include product ownership of this PrePass Inform product that we're going to learn about today. It's a business intelligence platform that allows the motor carrier customers to utilize bypass, tolling, and inspection data to better manage their business. Drew obtained his business management degree from University of Oregon, excuse me. So if he yells out "Go Ducks," you'll understand why. It's an honor. We've been talking about doing this program for a long time, and with the Inform product coming on and the challenges that we know facing motor carriers, we thought this was a very timely topic to help you. You know, you hear PrePass and you may think of toll tags, or some of you do understand what weigh in motion is, but there is a lot more to this enterprise and the products that they offer. So I've talked long enough. I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Drew so that we can become better informed of the influences of how this helps to move everything forward. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
So Tommy and Rich, thank you both very much for giving us an opportunity to speak to your group today. We're always excited for the opportunity to share a little bit about who we are and what we do. And so with that having been said, the history of HELP Inc. is incredibly unique. And most people know us for the services we provide, which is PrePass and PrePass Plus. However, they really have no idea how our program came to exist or the structure of our organization. So I want to start there for a few minutes. And you'll see in the first bullet point that we were a state full funded research project from 1985 to 1990. And specifically that project was called the Crescent Project because you had the states of Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, who literally, those states pulled funding to look at the concept that said, can we pre-screen trucks on credentials? Can we identify them at highway speeds? And can we accurately weigh them at highway speeds? And so a lot of research was done during the initial phase of our existence from 1985 to 1990. And so the proof of concept was completely validated, and then it went and became a federal demonstration from 1990 to 1993. And the goal, once we were able to go through the technical aspects, was really to look and establish a cooperative environment between industry and government to focus on reductions in congestion as well as environmental impacts. So like so many federally funded projects, you get your proof of concept. Everybody has bought into it. They've identified the benefits to both the state agencies as well as the industry. And then the big question is asked, which is, well, holy smokes, who's going to pay for this and how can we roll this out? So that's where HELP Inc. became established in 1993. And so one of the big concerns from industry was, if we are going to voluntarily enroll in a program that identifies our trucks, houses important data about where our lanes are, we don't want the government to have access to this data. And we're not going to voluntarily sign up to pay money to enroll in this project and have that what was a perceived disadvantage, and did not want to be exposed to a higher level of scrutiny than those trucks and carriers that were not enrolled. And so with HELP, that's where we became a true public-private partnership, and we were established in 1993. And when we say a true partnership, literally our board of directors is comprised of a representative from a state agency as well as from industry for each of the HELP member states. And so when you look at the state agencies, normally it's going to be somebody from Commercial Vehicle Enforcement or from the Department of Transportation. And the state, it really depends on who has what responsibilities for the scale houses. In some states, the DOT is responsible for infrastructure, and enforcement mans the facility, and those are the dynamics that generally drive that. On the industry side, we generally will have somebody who's either an executive or owner of a fleet, a motor carrier, or a state trucking association executive. So once we are established, the next big question is how do we fund this? And so a contract RFP went out for somebody to provide us both the venture capital to fund this build out as well as the technology. And so once that was put in place, we were established as a 501c3 organization, a public charity, and the mission is first and foremost safety, followed by efficiency and innovation. And you'll see on the third bullet, the carrier fees are what support our program. Everything that we have put in the 32 states that we're currently in has been put in place at no cost to those states. That is how and why we are a nonprofit public charity. And it is the fees that are generated from the motor carriers who are enrolled and participating that have allowed us to pay down our debt, We have invested in the 23 plus years that we've existed. We have invested over $650 million, and so it has been a long journey, but it has been the support of both the government and industry that has made this a feasible product and the services that we offer. So in terms of our key offerings, again, people don't always recognize the help name, but they certainly recognize PrePass. And so, as most folks are aware, that it's a transponder-based system, and as they're driving down the highway, they have a transponder in the window of their vehicle. You can see a little bit lower on the slide the Elite Pass, which is one of those products, and it allows the vehicle to be identified and go through the screening process. And I'll touch base on specifically how that works on a slide here in a minute. The additional products that we have is PrePass Plus. So our devices are used for bypassing as well as paying tolls throughout the country. And most recently, about a year ago, we rolled out Elite Pass, which allowed us to really bring tolling interoperability to our customer base. This was a mandate that came through Congress, and it was part of MAP 21, and it was supposed to have been accomplished, but like so many other federal mandates, it has not materialized. So we took the proactive position in working with vendors to try and get all the tolling protocols that are used in the major networks throughout the country into a single device, as well as bypassing, and that allows the motor carriers to be able to leverage that technology for multiple functions. The last thing you'll see on there is Inform, and we're going to have an actual demonstration towards the end of this conversation today, and I think your folks will be excited to see what we're doing with the data that passes through our program and how it can be an absolute phenomenal resource for those carriers that are enrolled in our program. So this slide here, we like to call this map the heart attack map, and it represents the anticipated freight volumes as published by US Doughty. The last update on this one was in February of 2015. And as you can see, the freight corridors are pretty well identified, and I think most people are aware of the fact that nearly 70% of all freight is moved on trucks. We don't see increased capacity happening when it comes to railroads. We don't see a lot of rail spurs being put in at Target and Walmart stores. So when you look at this congestion, the big question is how do we continue to create efficiencies on the highway? How do we continue to move these increased volumes of freight? And that's what we focus on. Today, we have over 550,000 trucks enrolled in our program, representing over 51,000 fleets, over 300 sites in 32 states. And we have electronic toll collection in 21 different states as well. And that continues to build out. And as you can see in the lower right-hand corner of this slide, since we started tracking the benefits, which was in 1997, so the first 4 years they were not tracked to this level, but you can see the phenomenal savings generated by the 712 million bypasses, operating savings, $5.2 billion. You look at the emission savings, because these trucks not having to sit and idle in line to go through a weigh facility, obviously they run at their best performing level when they're at highway speed. So there's been over 629,000 metric tons in terms of emission reductions.
I just want to interject on that slide, Mark, that those of us that underwrite our customers, or we have customers who are underwriters, that eastern half on the other side of the Mississippi surely demonstrates just how important a product like this can be on being able to continue to be efficient and keep rolling. So if you've never seen that before, that's a very interesting map.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I will say one of the things that that people ask us is, well, why are you not in the lower 48? And although we do continue to expand into additional states, our strategy has always been to focus our presence on the freight corridors. So when we're looking at putting in a new site, because the states actually will approach us and provide their case study as to why we should invest in that particular location. Again, we're looking at it that says, okay, it has to be a benefit to the state, but there has to be a mutual benefit to the motor carrier. And so that's where you'll see our strategy is not necessarily just the states, but also being present where the trucks can get their bypasses. So quickly I'll pop through how PrePass works, because people ask us this question quite often. You know, on this graphical depiction, really when you see the number 1, and people see we call them gantries, but you'll see that pole that overhangs the interstate, and it's doing a couple of different things. Number 1, it's reading the transponder ID in that truck as it approaches. The system reads at a 99.9% accuracy level, which is exceptionally important, wanting to make sure that we're able to both identify the truck as well as accurately correlate the weight from the weigh in motion scale to that truck. And so that is what takes place in 1. Number 2, the data goes back to the scale house where our computers, and it's a closed network, it's our own network, and the vehicle information is queried at that point in time, and the bypass decision is made independent of the input from that facility. And that's what's really important, and I'll cover it in a little more depth here in a minute, but the program is based on pre-clearance, meaning that the trucks are already screened, and the scale facility gets the result of that event. And the reason it was set up that way is because industry did not want for the personnel at the weigh station to be able to profile them. And that was one of the main components when this program came to being. The second major concern from industry is they also didn't want us to provide time and date stamp to enforcement because they didn't want their hours of service to be reverse engineered. Now obviously as technology is advanced, that will become less and less of an issue with the ELD mandate. But to this day, we still do not present time and date stamp associated with each actual bypass event unless the truck is pulled into the station. So moving from number 2 to number 3, the truck is going to receive the data back, which is on the transponder. It will give them an audible as well as either a green light or a red light. Obviously, green light means proceed down the highway at highway speeds. The red light means that they're going to pull in. And so that pull-in could be generated for a variety of reasons. It could be either there's a credential that's out of order, the truck is running over weight, whether it be gross or axle weight or bridge weight for some states, or it could be we have a 5% random pull-in rate, and that random pull-in rate is there to make sure that the system has the integrity built into it and that both industry as well as enforcement are comfortable that they're validating the system throughout the usability of it. So after that, the next piece, number 4, you see is a bypass compliance reader, and really what that does is it reads the transponder a second time, and if that truck received a red light and didn't pull in, it will identify that event back to the scale facility, and if they have a chase vehicle, they can send them after that truck. In addition to that, in some states, they actually have us send letters of notification out to chronic offenders who are bypassing that have not earned a bypass based on their credentials. And then as I said in number 5, that's when trucks get pulled in that are randomly selected. So next I want to touch base what may seem obvious to some, but we like to make sure that people are aware of what the true benefits are to the motor carriers. You know, first and foremost, as Rich said, having come from the industry side, saving time. You know, when I reach out to truckers, whether it's at rest stops, whether it's America's Road Team that I see at different events, you know, the one thing they say is there's nothing like getting a green light and seeing other trucks sitting in that line in queue waiting to, you know, slowly idle over a static scale while they're going down the highway. That obviously leads to number 2, which is saving fuel. Number 3, improve revenue. And this is a double edge. You have improved revenue and you also have, you know, your cost savings. You know, the FMCSA did a study and they identified that the average savings is $8.69 per bypass. And when you couple that with the fact that for a carrier who's running a single truck and they're paying $17.65 per month, 2 bypasses, on their 3rd bypass, that is a very positive return on investment. So not only do you save your time and fuel, but you're also saving money. So the economics makes sense. Reducing risk, again, that's your folks' expertise, but when you have trucks that are having to slow down, to exit the highway and go into the weigh facilities, or looking to speed up, to merge back into traffic, we all know that there's associated risk there for accidents. So keeping them moving at highway speeds, of course, reduces risk. And that's not even just to the weigh facilities, that's also when they're electronically paying their tolls. And they're able to proceed in those lines versus having to do the start-stop and have to pay the tolls at the cash windows. The next one, improved driver retention and recruitment. Again, carriers advertise that they're a PrePass carrier because it helps them to attract and retain their drivers. And a lot of times, you know, we've had folks come back to us and say, you know, when we advertise this, it's like a good housekeeping seal of approval. And it speaks a lot that the carrier A is qualified and enrolled, and the drivers obviously know what those benefits are going to be for them if they've ever had an experience with PrePass. Next thing I want to touch on is pre-clearance, because as you said, you heard me say a little bit earlier that the weigh facility does not actually make that screening decision. Now we have MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with each of the states, and the states identify the specific criteria that are applicable in their particular state. And based on that, we generate the actual screening result. And this helps to make sure that there's no profiling, and that takes place before that vehicle's ever on the road. Enforcement officers, as I said, can only view the PrePass credentials if the truck is red lighted. One of the things people ask is it a set it and forget it? Meaning, once I qualify, am I always going to be in PrePass? And the answer to that is you'll be enrolled in PrePass as long as your credentials and your ISS scores are at the acceptable levels. And so carriers do get downgraded every month and also get upgraded depending upon those specific variables. As you'll see, you know, other than Safer and CView, which I know your folks are familiar with, we ping a total of 102 different databases. Some of those we get, you know, the big ones, the IFTA, the IRP, and the UCR. But also the frequency that states upload their information to Safer and CView is different than what we obtain directly from many states. So where they may report their information on a quarterly basis, we actually pay states. It's all public data, but we actually pay them to obtain data on a more frequent basis, and sometimes pay to have integration built with our system so that we can get near real-time and in some cases real-time updates.
Let me ask you one question real quick. You said the vehicle is screened, but really is the vehicle screened or the motor carrier screened in this case? Don't you just screen the motor carrier, not the individual vehicles?
Yeah, so the carrier is screened, Tommy. The reason when I say vehicle is because when there's weigh in motion present, that is an actual screening for the actual weight associated with the truck.
So the
credentials are associated with the carrier.
With the carrier, and then the individual vehicle, as they go through there, the weight and all's checked and that kind of stuff is where the individual one did, but it starts with being the concept that's pre-screened. I just want to make sure that we understood we're not looking at every truck.
That is correct. It is based on the carrier's US DOT number.
Okay.
So some of the key databases. Again, as we've said, Safer CView is obviously the one that most folks are familiar with. The second bullet point under the Safer database you'll see is that some states still don't upload carrier data to Safer. They're not what's called CVision compliant. They're not receiving the funding from US DOT and specifically FMCSA, and so they don't upload those records. And so in those particular instances, we contract directly with those states and pay them for that data. And that's one of the things that makes us unique, is that we're wanting to make sure that we have the most complete and accurate data set to look at when generating the bypass decision. As you already heard me say, some of them don't necessarily upload as frequently as we would like, and so we proactively engage with the states to obtain the data as quickly as possible. There's also, as some people may or may not be aware of, that there's data integrity issues. So if a state uploads their data, and we've actually seen this happen where there's, for some other reason, there was an extra digit put in the alphanumeric field because of a programming change made at the state, there's not a quality control system within Safer Seaview that necessarily catches that. So those are processes that we have in place so that we can go out. If we see that, then we will interface directly with the state, try and help them to remediate the issue and get the correct data uploaded.
We're familiar with Safer. Seaview is the enforcement officer's information, right? I mean, explain what the difference is between Safer and Seaview, using them together here.
Yeah, well, Seaview, again, they're partners from this perspective. It stands for Commercial Vehicle Information Exchange Window. And yeah, so Safer is the carrier side and Seaview is the enforcement side. You are correct there.
Okay.
So next we come into what's referred to as ISS, the Inspection Selection System. And Drew's going to spend a pretty fair amount of time during the Inform demo speaking to exactly how that interfaces from a CSA aspect, but it is a derivative of the CSA score. And that is the number that is utilized by the states and is set as a credential in the PrePass system that says, okay, what level of bypass is a truck going to get when it has an ISS score of a 90 versus an ISS score of a 60? And that's one of those things that often is misunderstood. People have heard the term, and fortunately we've got a subject matter expert sitting here today that can delve into it a little bit deeper for us. But it's important for people to know that it is not the actual CSA score, but the ISS score that states use and the thresholds that they set. A truck must have a minimum threshold of 98 to even be able to enroll in the program. And as you've heard me speak about some of the different databases, really that's what we're looking at, is when a carrier contacts us and is looking to enroll in the program, they're providing us their USDOT number, and we're going out and, similar to what you would do when you're obtaining credit, right? We're going to ping the databases to make sure that their credentials are in order, that their operating authority is current, that they have their IFTA, the IRP, their UCR, as well as identify what their ISS score is. And so it's a pretty painless process for the motor carrier to enroll, whether they call us at 1-800-PrePass or they go to our website. And that's the information they need to come to the table with so that we can tell them pretty darn quick as to whether or not they would be qualified to enroll in our program.
But this is important to us as an insurance provider because you're pre-screening them even in more depth than we can, even using CAB or our carrier software, our system here, because I assume that the states allow you to do this because you do an acceptable job pre-screening these drivers, or these motor carriers, because if you didn't, they wouldn't allow this to happen. So this is what you bring to the table to the states. States will do this screening for you, and we won't let anybody be access to this system unless they meet the criteria that we agree to, and we hang our hat on us being able to do that correctly. That's an important part from the insurance standpoint, that the people who qualify for this is being looked at not only by the state but also by y'all and also by us, meaning the insurance industry, as far as their on-road activities as reflective in CSA or ISS and those things.
Yes, sir. Again, Mark, it's another demonstration that you're a good motor carrier, right? And this kind of puts a monkey on your back that you want to keep these scores favorable so you can keep passing.
Without a doubt, and even in terms of a carrier may qualify in one state and not in another state. We have some states that, again, are more stringent on the enforcement of IFTA versus states that are not. We have some states that have an ISS threshold of 75, which is far more stringent, and other states, may have a threshold of 90. And so, depending upon what those states' thresholds are, a carrier who's traveling in a state primarily that has 75, and if they're continuing to fluctuate between an 80 and a 70, yeah, they're going to see an effect on the number of bypasses. However, if they're running in other states where there's more diversity in their traffic patterns, they're going to see far more bypasses. But that's actually one of the questions we most often get asked is, on average, how many bypasses do carriers get? And of course, it depends on the lanes that they work. But you're generally looking somewhere between 8 to 12 bypasses per month per truck. So
one other point here, just a question. What's the procedure if they fall out of these standards? How do you go and take this system away from them?
Well, in terms of taking it away, first of all, before it gets there, we're obviously monitoring their ISS scores from our perspective. We want them to proactively be aware, even if they're not seeing it or they're not monitoring it. We will, through some automated communications, whether it's through written or telephone, send out notifications that they're becoming perilously close to having an ISS score that will knock them out of the ability to bypass. So first of all, we want to create the notification so the carrier has time to be aware of it and if there are steps that they can take. What I will share is Drew's, when he goes through Inform, you're going to see some data points which we're really trying to put in front of the carrier, Tommy, so that not only can they see what is impacting their ISS score, but they can see it very specifically in terms of where in the country it's happening, what is happening as a result of the inspections, and get a real deep dive so that they have actionable data to be able to sit down with their whether it's their drivers, their maintenance folks, and say, guys, here's some simple things that we need to put in place that we're getting dinged on, and we need to have some heightened awareness so that we can't afford to have this happen again, so let's make sure we put these proactive steps in place.
Actually, you answered the question when I was thinking my question. You don't take the transponder away; they just don't qualify anymore in that state because of that score to be to pass.
Yes, they'll be 100% pull in, and they'll be red lighted.
That's how that's done. Yeah, okay, I understand that.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. So one of the last slides I want to touch base on before I hand it off to Drew is you're hearing kind of thematically, data is really the crux of what we do. And we go to extraordinary means to make sure that the data that we get is accurate. We want to make sure that it's properly associated with that motor carrier. We want to make sure, as I mentioned before, that if there's inconsistencies in data that a state is uploading, that we're proactively engaged in finding out what that is and making sure that gets corrected. The question on timeliness, is old data worse than no data? In some cases it is. If a motor carrier has worked really hard to improve their CSA scores, which translates to their ISS scores, but old data is what's sitting out there and they're not getting credit for it, obviously they're still being penalized for historical performance. So we try to make sure that we have the timeliness. Want to make sure the data is secure, not compromised. Usage, again, as we said before, our data, what a lot of folks are not aware of, is the actual bypass data in our system. 90 days after the bypass event, we purge that data. And so that really feeds into sort of the legal, legislative, liability, et cetera, et cetera. We want to make sure that we're not creating any data liabilities for that motor carrier. And then privacy. Again, we're a closed system. It's a closed network. And we work hard to make sure that the data associated with the motor carriers is kept private. So with that having been said, I'm going to flip over to Drew, and he's going to go through a demo of Inform.
Thank you, Mark. And Tommy and Rich, thank you for those questions, and keep them coming. My tendency is to get a little excited about this stuff because I'm sort of a safety and data geek, which is a very unusual combination. But chime in with any questions as we're going along here. Briefly, a little bit of background here. We launched this Inform product to the industry, or I should say first showed it to them in early October. What you're going to see now is currently in beta. It will be released to the general population of PrePass customers in Q1 2017. So we are very excited about offering this tool to folks, and the feedback that we've gotten so far has been extremely positive.
Drew, I want to go real quickly. You have the PrePass that just goes through what we just went through with Mark. The PrePass Plus, as I understand it, that includes the toll services and those kind of things, and this is the third product, right? And so you buy one of the three, or you buy them kind of in sequence. You buy the first one, then you can upgrade it, and this is the final upgrade for, I assume, some slightly different cost per month or per vehicle.
Okay. Well, we didn't script that question, but I'm gonna take it as if we did.
Okay.
You are correct. PrePass and PrePass Plus are two products that are priced separately and can be bought either on a standalone or in conjunction. This Inform product is a value-add service to our PrePass and or PrePass Plus customers. So there is no additional cost for this.
Oh, okay, good.
This is going to be provided to folks to help them improve or maintain their safety profile so they can continue to use our services, bypassing and tolling. All right, so we've got a vested interest in providing this to them.
Oh, so this is helping them improve so they keep qualifying for the PrePass option to go buy the weigh stations. Okay, all right. Thank you for clearing that up. I just want to make sure where all this fit in.
No, you couldn't have segued better for me. So thanks to you for that. As Mark indicated, one of the primary indicators or determiners for allowing a motor carrier to bypass is their inspection selection score. That is a score on a scale of 1 to 100. That is calculated basically by putting your CSA data into a blender. They push puree, and out comes your ISS score. So what we're trying to do is provide a very useful and easy-to-use tool for our customers that, number one, lets them see what their overall safety profile is. Number two, drill in and quickly and easily see what the causes and conditions are. And number three, easily communicate to their internal and external customers or stakeholders what those folks need to know in order to take action to reap the benefits or fix the issues, as the case may be. So when a motor carrier...
I need to ask you one other question. We are very cognizant of the ISS scores not being available to us anymore, and in our presentations we talk about CAB doing their own analysis with their data to come up with their ISS scores, and we also talk about carrier software doing the same thing. Are you getting the PIN number from the motor carrier, and is this the motor carrier's actual CSA scores, or are you doing like CAB carrier software using the data and coming up with projected scores?
No, this is actual carrier data. Our relationship with the motor carriers and the FMCSA, we access this data for their credentialing.
Okay,
so
right.
As a matter of course, we have this data available. We have to use it to go through their whole credentialing process on an ongoing basis. So we are essentially repurposing this data and adding value to it on behalf of the motor carrier. So this is actual real data that you're going to be looking at.
Their score, okay. Because again, when we talk about the system, I just want to make sure what we have heard before and how this fits in. And that's what I assumed, because I figured you'd had to have their PIN number to be able to screen that. But I want to make sure, or at least the same access as if you had their PIN number. So this is their actual scores as produced by the FMCSA.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's one of the unique things is because of how our program has been set up, Tommy. And when the motor carrier actually applies to have the PrePass service, they are authorizing us and acknowledging that we have the right to query this data, because we have to, and to be in compliance with our MOUs with the states.
That's part of the credential program. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
So when a motor carrier is given access to their Inform system, when they log in, and everybody will have a unique set of login credentials, what they're going to see is what we call the company snapshot, which is what you're seeing on the screen now. The company snapshot is simply an amalgamation of key safety data points that give sort of the 5,000-foot overview as to what's going on with this particular motor carrier. So at the top here, you see we always want to start with our ISS score because that is the key indicator of this carrier's ability to bypass or not. We also summarize data from SAFER as well as SMS, so you see their vehicle data, their inspection summary, and out of service rates here going across the top. In this instance, this motor carrier has an ISS score of 99. And that 99 classifies them as what the FMCSA says is a high-risk carrier. Why are they a high-risk carrier? Well, they're a high-risk carrier because their CSA basics are in a combination of alert and high scores, and that particular unique combination dictates that ISS score of 99. So we restate their basic information here in this bar chart. I can also click over onto my status tab, and I see in this case I've got 3 basics in alert, and because my unsafe is at 95 and my crash is at 90, those 2 in particular are what's causing my ISS to be 99. Over here I can look at the top violations trending over the last 24 months. If I want to pull out speeding or unsafe driving violations, I can click on these bar chart or the pie charts, and I can also view this data in a table format as well. The last thing we look at on the carrier snapshot is a 24-month trend. We start out with our ISS score over 24 months, and if I click over here on my basics, I can begin to overlay my CSA basics to my ISS. So I can begin to see trends and patterns. That's what I'm trying to point out to our carrier customers is, where are these trends occurring? Where are the patterns that I can take action without having to go and dig down into all of the raw data and try to find those on my own? I can toggle off and on various basics, and that will show me then just the correlation, in this case, of these 3 basics along with my ISS in red. All right, so that carrier snapshot or the company snapshot gives me my starting point for telling this story. Now that I know my ISS is 99 and I know the makeup of my basics and the correlation or patterns that are starting to emerge, what I want to do is then click over to what we call our data insights. And when I get over to my data insights, what this is going to allow me to do is view my safety data on a level that heretofore has not been available in the industry to my knowledge. And I've been doing this CSA safety thing for quite some time now, and I'm very excited about this. So when we get over to the data insights, what we provide the motor carrier is just a top-level view of what's going on in the country with their, in this case, violation data. So over here on the left, I can navigate from my state view or a highway view, and I'll show you that in just a minute. I default to a 2-year time frame, which is the same thing as SMS. I can also look at my map of the United States based upon any of these categories. So whether I want to look at it by these types of violations or these types of inspections or crashes, my view of the United States is going to change dynamically as I toggle through those different views. So my default view, I can see all violations. Visually, my eye is drawn to Arizona because that's where the red density is, so that's where I want to obviously pay attention. And I'm trying to provide an easy visualization of the data. I don't want to have my customer have to go find it and dig through a bunch of stuff. I want to lead them to it. So that's the reason that this whole user interface is designed such as it is.
So what you're telling them is the states where they're having the most problems.
On this view, that's correct.
Okay.
But it gets better than that, right? So if let's just pick a different view. Let's say I want to see where all of my clean inspections are occurring. I simply select my clean inspections, and then I scroll down, and my mouse is a little bit funky here, run my query, and now the map of the United States is going to change, and here's where my clean inspections are occurring.
And the red state being favorable or unfavorable?
In this case, that's favorable, right? Because this is a volume of clean inspection, so it's a pure inspection count.
Okay.
So if I'm trying to incent my drivers for clean inspection, some carriers do, some don't, but if that's where I'm going with this, then I can sort of pick and choose or identify what states, perhaps what lanes, and we'll look at that in a second, may be conducive to clean inspections. But let's go back to my main problem. I've got an ISS of 99, and I know I've got those three basics that are out of whack. So where do I start? Well, one logical starting point might be out of service. So I know that out of service are generating a little extra bonus weight for me in terms of my CSA and ultimately my ISS. So if I just select out of service inspections, the view of the United States now changes once again. Instead of Arizona being the focal point, I've now got Kentucky and Tennessee being the obvious focal point for out of service. Well, let's just pick Kentucky and see what we get when we land there. So now, and I'll point out a big difference here with what the industry typically has seen. Up until this point, CSA or safety data at the state level is not particularly new and exciting, all right? I mean, it's interesting and we present it in a way that's very useful, but where we really start to make hay with this is when we begin to drill down, or as I call, increase the magnification in looking at their safety data. So I've selected Kentucky for out-of-service violations because that's where the system is visually telling me where to start. So if I begin to increase the magnification, now what I'm seeing is the state of Kentucky by county. And I'm also seeing here in red, Simpson County is clearly where my majority of my problems lie. So let's continue to drill down or increase the magnification. So all I'm doing to do this is using the wheel on my mouse. I could click over here on the magnify buttons, increase and decrease, but I'm just wheeling through this on my mouse. And as I get to this point in my magnification, what I'm seeing are a couple of things. These blue push pins represent county seats. So given the inspection data, we can always roll the data up to, at a minimum, obviously the state, but also the county. But my eye is drawn here to Franklin, all right, at Simpson County Waste Facility. This is where the real problem is occurring. So I want to begin to see what the heck is going on at Simpson County. So if I close this out, I can begin to drill down, and even if I would choose to, I can go over to a satellite view, and here's where the difference begins to really take hold. The mission of health is to make highways safer. I am a firm believer. And in order to make highways safer, I want to be able to help our customers facilitate a conversation with the other side, and that's enforcement. If enforcement's mission is to make highways safer, which it is, and carriers' mission, as they buy into the mission of making highways safer, then the data that we're going to provide them with Inform should enable them, at a minimum, to have the data available to them to have a discussion if that makes sense with enforcement. We want to take the emotion out of it, and we want to recognize that everybody has a job to do. But if we're all going towards making highways safer, then this should make that mission easier to accomplish. So now that I've got my information and I know clearly that I've got an issue at this scale house, I can go over to my details. And because I've been sorting through this, in the background, the data has been calculated for me or sorted for me. So all I have to do now is filter on Simpson County. And if I select Simpson County, apply the filter, here are every one of those out-of-service inspections in Simpson County at my disposal. All right? I can now export these to a CSV or an XML. I can email those to whoever I want to email them to. Excuse me, if I want to see what violations are included in that, I just click over to all violations or out of service violations. If I click vehicle out of service and run that query, then I'm going to see all of these vehicle maintenance violations. So it's very easy and intuitive for the end user, our motor carrier customer, to get to the data that they need. Number one, to help make decisions on getting this ISS either back to where it needs to be or keeping it where it is. And number two, I want to easily communicate to my internal and external stakeholders what I want to communicate to them, right? So making it easy, literally through a few clicks of the mouse and following the visualizations on the screen, I can get to all of this information. I'm going to show you one other view, and then we'll open it up for some questions here.
What about the inspection report? Can you drill into that?
We can. Oh, Mark asked if we have the inspection report available, and yes, we do. So the actual inspection report itself is available through these hyperlinks, and you can see the inspection number. And if I click on this, I'm not sure exactly how fast it's going to be coming up. It might take a little bit, but we will provide all of the detail that goes into the data that we're presenting on Inform itself. So we've redacted this because we're sort of playing with a live inspection report. Right. But I can see in this case my out-of-service violation was underinflated tires. That is an 8-point violation, plus it's out of service, so 2 bonus points there. That doesn't help my vehicle maintenance cause whatsoever. And I can also ultimately get down here, we're not showing anything yet, but see the inspector information. So if I am having issues or I perceive issues to be occurring at a particular location, again, I can have the data at least to have a conversation. All right.
Well, you also have an advantage of why those trucks are going there that often. Is it near a drop-off place? Is it right off the terminals? You know, or at the end? This one shows a disproportionate amount of tire problems, and I can't believe that other locations aren't finding some of the same tire problems as you see here. But clearly there is a concern there, and maybe this station pays more attention to uninflated tires than some others would. But again, these are kind of things you can look at.
He showed us their facility, you know, so they can bring them around back, and I think that's your point, Tommy, is that these guys love tires. So you better have your tires ready. I mean, that's the same thing we hear, right? That there's certain ports that you know this is a hot button, and if you're going to be going through here, you better have your tires ready.
I understand where you came from, and most of us have been in part of a presentation that Steve Bryan's done, so we know what you're coming. We see these things here about certain locations have a certain problem. But this is great information that's here. But this is available to the motor carrier, and again, I know this is rolled out. I know you don't have it here. Can this information with the permission of the motor carrier be available to us, the insurance industry?
With the permission of the motor carrier, absolutely.
So they would have to come up with some kind of contract with you, because this would be great for loss prevention help, I'm thinking, where if the loss prevention person's seriously trying to help them straighten out, because you're doing an overview and you're doing data, but you've got to now improve. So if the agent and or the loss prevention person that's either hired by the motor carrier or coming from the insurance provider had some of this information, they could come up with some actually more suggestions than we have now by, you know, why is those trucks there that often? Why do we have flat tires and things like this that can really drill down to the actual and take very, very positive steps. So I see this as a great part of it. It'd be something that we'd have to discuss later. A lot of motor carriers might not want to give us this, but if we're truly trying to help them improve, which we all are, I mean, our insurance industry wants to keep these people safe and wants to insure these people. And when we invest in writing the policy and start providing loss prevention, the more data we have, the better we can help them as a hands-on situation. This adds a lot of detail. I think, Rich, I think you agree with me that will allow us to help.
Most definitely, you know, and again, you know, not intended to be an ad, all listeners, but how are you doing it? You know, so here again, This is a tool that's about being able to operate down the roads with more safety, efficiency, and innovation. This is a challenge that we face. So it's great to see a product that can help them deal with the challenge. So, you know, I applaud you guys for adding it as a value add to being a PrePass subscriber.
Now, does the motor carrier get this report automatically, or do they have to sign in each month, or do they get an email from you that they need to look at it? How are you going to inform them? Because a lot of the smaller motor carriers can't come and look at this thing all the time. So how are you going to communicate this to them?
Well, the easiest solution for a smaller motor carrier would be to simply set up a couple of initial queries for themselves and schedule those to occur on a monthly basis, and that literally is all they would have to do.
Okay.
They'll have access to the system. We can help them set up those initial queries, but once they set it up, it will be sent to them. So it's not like they have to log in and start being data geeks to get this stuff.
Through email or through a notice they have to go on their computer. How, when you say sent to them, how is it sent to them?
It will be an attachment or a link through their email.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
And you know, one of the things, Tommy, that that I speak to, having come from the carrier side, can't tell you how many times you end up, especially in a small carrier, being disappointed that the driver forgot to give you that inspection report. And there's nothing worse than having a truck go out another time and getting dinged when it's completely preventable. And so that's one of the things we are trying to do, is to make sure that that data is there, it's present, it's at their fingertips, and trying to create a proactive environment for them to be able to deal with issues within maybe their own, the ranks of their drivers, their maintenance folks, even the shippers are dealing with. You know, if they're getting hit with overweight issues and it's coming from a specific distribution center, this gives them some great data to go back and sit down with that shipper as well.
And you bring up one other point. One of the things that we ask, because if you're not out of service, just have a violation, that you get a warning, and not a warning, you get a form, and you have to respond back that that violation has been corrected. And my comment I made to the Florida enforcement officers, what happens if you don't get that return back? And then they say, well, that's when we come and make a visit. And then my comment here is, how many of these drivers, particularly owner-operators, might not turn in that inspection report with that violation on it to the motor carrier, and so nothing gets responded. And so this would also help weed some of those things out. There's a lot of things I see in this area. And by the way, my fathers are truckers too. I think you might know that, Mark.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Drew, real quick, why don't you cover the interstate view?
Yeah, I will do that real quickly. I know we're getting close on time here. So what we've done, in addition to obviously the state view, which everybody more or less knows something about these days with CSA, taking it down to that county view, even to the inspector level, is something that is not readily available today to motor carriers as a matter of course. In addition, what we have done is, and this goes back to Mark's comments earlier around freight lanes, we have mapped out the entire interstate highway system on the U.S. So literally there's a few hundred different interstate highways, and if I just select any one of these interstate highways, I just select the Interstate 10 for the purposes of this example, because I know this motor carrier has inspections on Interstate 10, and it will drop all of my information as it relates to violations on Interstate 10. I can also look at all inspections on Interstate 10 and run that query. So now the map will be populated. Here's all of my inspections on Interstate 10. I can look literally at any of the basics that I want to along any interstate highway. So again, providing that level of granularity to quickly identify, okay, my ISS is 99, my unsafe, fitness, and crash are out of whack. I know pretty much what's causing my crash basic to be out of whack, so don't crash is probably the only real solid solution we're going to have to that. But if I look at driver fitness and unsafe, let's look down to the county level. Where are these events occurring? Let's look down to the scale house level. Where are these events occurring? And we mentioned earlier, somebody pointed out that clearly at Simpson County that these tires were clearly a focus for inspectors. That theme needs to be kept in mind by everybody, because every state, as Mark said, they're in charge of their enforcement for their state. At every facility, those inspectors are going to have his or her own issues that are top of mind for them. Okay, in this case, I'm looking at the Desert Hills scales in California, and I know for a fact that there is a large disparity in tire violations in Desert Hills. Well, why is that? Well, it's because inspectors don't want faulty retreads flying off, if the blacktop is 150 degrees and this stuff starts causing accidents.
You got the Death Valley, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing in Colorado, for example. Colorado, guess what? They write a lot of brake violations. Why is that? Well, if you're coming down the Rocky Mountains, guess what? They don't want your brakes given out on you, right? So, of course, they're going to be focused on brake issues. So that goes back to the point of every inspector has a job to do. And they're always going to have their own little quirks. And they're just people, just like your drivers are people. And some people are going to have bad days, and some people are going to have good days. We just want to provide the data that allows you to identify what's going on, recognize the issues that happen to be going into their particular jurisdiction, so you can be sensitive to that, take any corrective action, maybe have a conversation if that's something you want to pursue as well, and ultimately with the goal of reducing your violations, maybe encouraging more clean inspections if you're not seeing any come through on a particular highway or scale house. Get that ISS score down so you can continue to bypass, with ultimately the goal of making highways safer. Again, that's what we do.
That's great. Now, this also shows at fixed locations as well as roadside inspections, correctly, as officer driving.
That's correct. Now, I'll qualify that by pointing out the information that we can populate onto the maps themselves will be as good as the data on the inspection report.
Absolutely.
So if it's a poorly written report with no highway information whatsoever, then we will just roll that back up either to the county or the state, but likely the county.
Okay. Wow. All right. Go ahead, guys. I know we're timed there. This is a great information, and I think something that we might, once this is completely rolled out, I'd like to come back and revisit you, Rich. I think you would have the same thing here on this part of it. Is that where we finished, guys? Mark?
Yeah, I think for this afternoon, hopefully this gives everybody a good opportunity to see and understand a little bit more about who HELP is and what the products and services are that we offer. And if we could leave the listeners with anything, one of the nice parts about being a nonprofit is that we're able to provide value-add solutions such as Inform that are really set up to help our customers in the industry, advance that safety and efficiency message that we stand behind. And, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you folks this afternoon. We put up some contact information for folks if they have any additional questions or comments. We'd be more than happy to engage if we're not able to deal with those issues today, and really appreciate the time you've afforded us.
Now, we are going to, with your permission, we're going to allow them to download these slides, obviously not that informed information. I assume that's okay, and we'll have this. So if you get calls from some of our agents, Mark and Drew, you know where it's coming from, my friend. We hope you welcome those. We're not-for-profit, too, and we're all on the same page. We're trying to make the roads safer. We respect the truckers and we respect the truck drivers, and we want to give them all the help we can. And all this new data and this data that we have here to help them, to focus on, and to help the drivers be better is all helpful for us all. So we're all on the same page, and we really appreciate you taking the time share your time with us. Rich, you want to say something at the end, and then we'll close it down.
I likewise. Thank you, guys. This was awesome, very informative, and you know, if our goal is trying to help our motor carriers be better, operate more efficiently, this is spot on. So we talk a lot about it. Here's the tool. You know, quit talking about it and go do it. So thank you both. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Drew, for taking the time and sharing all this.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Next month's truck stop will be scheduled for January 12th at 2 p.m. We look forward to continuing sharing this kind of information to our members to, again, make the highway safer and to make our insureds better insured. We thank you for your time, this time together, and we hope you have a good holiday.